All right, so we're going to continue on with chapter 7. Let's see here. Okay, so in chapter 7, we're going to move away from the Schedule C and the 4562 and QBI and the Schedule SE and all that fun stuff, but now we're going to talk about a new schedule, the Schedule D, and also what's called the Form 4797. So a couple new forms. So you can see we've gone through the Schedule A, which was our itemized deductions, Schedule B, which was our interest and dividend income, Schedule C, which was our income from sole proprietorships, and now we're moving on to Schedule D and Form 4797. Fun times. What we're going to talk about here are capital gains and gains or losses. And we say capital gains. It could be losses as well. So capital gains and capital losses, as well as gains and losses from the sales of other types of property. So up to now, we've really talked about income that is like income that we're earning either through wages or as a sole proprietorship, or interest income, dividend income, kind of income that is earned on a regular basis. What we're talking about in this chapter is another type of income, but it's income from the sales of assets. And we have different classifications of assets. And of course, it wouldn't be tax if we didn't have rules, different rules for the different classifications of assets. So that's what we're going to go through in this chapter. So in order to understand how we treat those gains and losses, we have to calculate what our gains and losses are. We're going to come back to the concept of basis, because basis is super important when we're talking about gains or losses. It's kind of like our book value or cost of an asset, and then how much we sell it for. The difference between those two is our gain or our loss. But there are lots of different components and things that go into determining those amounts. So these are our learning objectives for the chapter. We're going to define some of the terms that we're going to be using and look at the tax forms that we're going to be using for sales of property transactions. So here we're talking about different types of property, and it's not just physical property, but also investment property like stocks and bonds and things like that. So some type of property that we have sold. We have 3 classifications of assets that we're going to cover. Ordinary assets, capital gain assets. So you can see we've got some numbers that we're going to be introducing here. Section 1221. So we had that Section 179 deduction that we talked about last chapter, referred to the code section under which it's described. Same thing here. So Section 1221, capital assets, means those capital assets are defined and talked about under Section 1221 of the Internal Revenue Code. 1231, business assets. So again, under Section 1231 of the Internal Revenue Code. So we're going to classify those, define what each of those types of assets is. And again, we have to do that because when we sell those assets and we have a gain or a loss on those assets, the treatment of that gain or loss is going to vary, and even where we report that gain or loss is going to vary depending upon what type of asset it is. So we're going to start by talking about the tax rules for recognizing gains or losses on the sale of ordinary assets, our first category of assets. Then we're going to talk as well about capital assets. What happens when we sell? What is a capital asset? What happens when we sell a capital asset at a gain? what happens when we sell a capital asset at a loss and where we report that. And then we're going to move on to talk about, so those capital assets are the 1221 assets, and we're going to move on to talk about what happens when we sell a 1231 business asset at a gain or loss. And within those 1231 assets, we have some subcategories of property that are referred to as Section 1245 and 1250 property. So we'll get into that. I know you guys love the numbers and referring to those code sections. We've got a lot of that in this chapter. And then we've got a couple of other special types of sales that we're going to talk about how we calculate gains and losses on block stock sales, capital gain distributions, sales of mutual funds, and we'll define what each of those items is when we get to that particular, that section. So that kind of summarizes what we're going to look at in this chapter.